Chapter 48. Skin in the Game. Unfortunately, our love cocoon had to break open. The next day Luke and I headed to the set in a new Range Rover Luke had delivered the day before. The first scenes were set to be shot along a fairly secluded, gorgeous beach front. Capturing the natural beauty of Hawaii was a big part of the film. The production crew had a tent set up a few yards from the beach. There we met the rest of the cast and crew, including Luke's new co-star, Rita Nelson. By now, I knew better than to worry about Luke falling for the typical Hollywood beauty, but Rita was breathtaking. Her golden brown hair cascaded in beachy waves down her back. Already dressed for the scene, she wore a skimpy pink string bikini, revealing her golden tan, long legs and perky breasts. She appeared entirely comfortable in her beach wardrobe, smiling and talking with the cast and crew, almost all of whom were dressed in shorts and t-shirts. Luke and I shook her hand as we introduced ourselves, and then a PA ushered Luke and Rita away to talk to the director. Meanwhile, another PA took me to a different tent where the extras for the film were given instructions on the day's shots. The production crew wanted every female to pick a bikini from a selection hanging from a wire rack near the back of the tent, while the men were provided board shorts. Excuse me? I asked a PA when searching through the rack. Do you have any bikinis that are less skimpy? The girl shrugged and said, "The director wants to see some skin." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," a handsome man behind me said, "the more tits and ass the better." I laughed. I turned around and offered a handshake. Ima Stella. Im Jimmy. He shook my hand and smiled. I picked a bikini off the rack that basically looked like dental floss, with white strings tied to a small triangle patch in the front, meant to cover my nether regions. Good thing Michelle convinced me to get a bikini wax. The top didn't include that much more fabric, barely able to conceal my breasts. I held it up to my body and shook my head. "I heard they have some more athletic suits in that bag over there." Jimmy pointed to a duffel bag on the ground near the corner. "Sure," I said, holding my finger to my lips as I snuck over to the bag and snatched a more appropriate swimsuit from inside. Jimmy laughed. Once we were all changed, the PA instructed us how to position ourselves in the water. In addition to surfers and paddle boarders, the director wanted people performing tricks and riding waves with boogie boards too. A second production crew would film the shots both from the beach and in the water. Our instructions were to look like we were having fun. I grabbed a boogie board and headed out. I felt more comfortable as part of a group of extras, rather than being singled out like in Luke's last movie. I didn't want to be treated differently just because of my relationship with Luke. Out on the water I exuded confidence, riding waves, taking on bigger and bigger surf. At one point, I jetted toward the camera, cutting the board along the wave's crest. The others paddled out and waited for waves, the paddle boarders floating past the break. Everyone seemed to be grooving, but no one was catching as many waves as me, except maybe Jimmy. He blew by me on almost every wave, standing comfortably on his surfboard. On one wave we rode in together practically neck and neck. When we jumped off in the shallow water, he waited until I rejoined him with my boogie board. "You're pretty good with that thing," he said. "Yeah, thanks. You're not so bad yourself." We paddled out together. After a few more waves the crew waved us in. They said they got all the shots they needed for the day, and that we should go to another tent to enjoy lunch. As Jimmy and I walked along the sand, squishing between our toes, I saw Luke filming his scene with Rita on the beach. They looked flirty and cozy, obviously creating romantic chemistry on screen. Rita sat in her itty-bitty bikini, appearing flawless. I looked away, telling myself it was just make-believe. "My money's on them hooking up before this movie wraps," said Jimmy, pointing to Luke and Rita. "She's just so gorgeous, and I hear he's a playboy." I wanted to scream at him. Let him know I was Luke's girlfriend. Tell him that Luke loved me. But then I remembered I didn't know that for sure. He hadn't said those 3 magic words. As if in a trance, I walked with Jimmy to the lunch tent. About a half hour later, while I was eating lunch with Jimmy and a pair of twins who liked to paddleboard and looked good in string bikinis, Luke sauntered over and sat down. He kissed me on the cheek, and I blushed as he introduced himself to Jimmy and the twins. I didn't think he was going to reveal our relationship on set. Jimmy gave me a confused look, and I tried not to make eye contact. We all attempted to continue our conversation, but having a big movie star at our table suddenly made everything awkward. "I have to film another scene," Luke said. "You take the car. I'll hitch a ride home with someone." I nodded, even more embarrassed that my table mates now knew I was staying with Luke. He kissed me again on the cheek, got up and left. Jimmy bent over the table and said to me, "Why didn't you tell me you were with him?" His question irritated me. Why does it matter? I'm my own person. It's just, I wouldn't have said that thing that I said. He started to get tongue-tied. Don't worry. I'm not worried. I brought my hands to my chest, emphasizing my point. But that's why you're here, isn't it? To be with Luke. Look, you saw me out there, I'm damn good. I might not look like Rita in a string bikini, but I can hold my own in the water. Jimmy held up his hands in defense. Whoa, I know. It's just hard to compete with someone with a body like that. Jimmy nodded his head toward Rita, still in her bikini, smiling and chatting with some of the extras. As she moved from table to table, her legs glided on the ground seamlessly. I had to keep my jealousy in check. Sure, she was attractive. Okay, really attractive, but Luke liked me for me. He wouldn't invite me to Hawaii and then ditch me for a sultry, voluptuous co-star. Or would he? Driving home, I thought about what Jimmy had said. I replayed the image of Luke and Rita on the beach, their intimate romantic scene, how quickly they seemed to connect. I wondered why even after such a positive day, riding waves and having fun, I still harbored doubts about my own self-worth. As the sun set, I waited for Luke, checking the window at every little noise, anticipating his return. Around 8, I heard rustling on the driveway and stood behind a pillar, watching Luke pull up in a pickup truck driven by Rita. Once she parked, I saw her say something, then they laughed. She tapped Luke's arm lightly. They looked awfully chummy after only one day on set. At that rate, Jimmy's prophecy would be fulfilled in no time. I sulked at Rita's ease with people, how she exuded confidence. From what I observed earlier that day, she not only looked beautiful, but also had no problem making new friends. Jealousy pulsed in my body. I tried to control it, telling myself it didn't matter. I was a tough cookie that could get out of difficult situations. It shouldn't have mattered that I didn't quite fit the model physique like Rita. And yet, watching Rita with Luke, I couldn't quite quash my insecurities. Chapter 49, Friendly Fire. I settled on the large couch that came with the rental, quickly turning on the TV to look like I was busy when Luke came in. As he walked toward me, I turned my head, accepting his light kiss on my cheek. So you hitched a ride with Rita, I said, trying not to give anything away. Yeah, she's cool. Did you know she likes to camp? He smiled wider. I smiled, nodding, secretly bemoaning that she shared an interest in one of Luke's favorite activities. He sat across from me on the crisp white sectional. She calls it glamping or something like that. He chuckled a little. I think this movie's going to be good. He nodded his head multiple times. We really hit it off. I can see that. I raised my eyebrows and turned my gaze back to the TV. Want to get some pizza for dinner? Maybe Hawaiian pizza. No, I already ate, I lied. I was actually starving, but the thought of eating greasy pizza the night before another shooting day where I had to wear a bathing suit just wasn't appealing. I heard the second production team is going to shoot some close-ups tomorrow. Maybe look for a secondary character. Someone who looks good in the water. He smiled my way. Yeah, well, I don't think it'll be me. Why not? You're great on those waves. There's plenty of people to choose from. People who look much better in a bikini. I couldn't tell him how uncomfortable I felt surrounded by so many beautiful people on set. How I just wanted to run and hide. Oh, give me a break. He swatted at the air in front of him. Just get out there tomorrow and do your thing. I keep telling you that you're beautiful. Luke got up and walked to the kitchen, getting a glass of water from the refrigerator. He took off his shirt and came back to the couch, sitting next to me this time. He leaned back and threw his arm around me. Throw on a robe, I said, jokingly poking at his chest. We could watch TV topless? He looked at me, his eyebrows raised in a question. Not a chance, I smirked. Okay, Luke turned to the TV. What's this? Just some show where these stick-thin divas with money give tours of their mansions.
Educational.
Maybe Rita will be on here next season, I joked. I can't see it, he said. She's more down to earth than these people. He pointed at the TV. Just admit she's beautiful. Of course she's beautiful, just not my type. I laughed. She's everyone's type. Long, lean tan with perky tits to match. Luke looked frustrated. I can't keep having this conversation. He rubbed his hand over his face, thinking about what to say next. He hugged me tighter. Everything okay? He turned to me, watching my face. It's nothing. Just something Jimmy said. I tried to smile. That guy you had lunch with today? Was he a jerk? No, I shook my head. He's cool. He just said something that got me thinking. Luke looked me in my eyes. I'm into you. But until you learn to be confident in yourself, I'm afraid this will keep happening. And I don't want that. He kissed me long and slow on the lips. Sitting with Luke on the couch, nestled in his bare chest, I felt safe. There I didn't need to prove anything. I tossed and turned that night, unable to sleep. I wasn't sure why I couldn't be more relaxed in Luke's world. My new friend Jimmy apparently put some dangerous ideas in my head. I don't know why I listened to him, why I let his comments ruffle me. It had been difficult listening to Luke rave about Rita. And I couldn't help feeling a little annoyed at that. Especially when I was unsure about our relationship status. Without Daniel or Michelle as a sounding board, I'd have to fix my problem myself. Since we lived in different time zones, it was too late to call them. Even old Mrs. Rose's advice of getting naked probably wouldn't work this time. I aimed to show Luke I could change. He couldn't fix my problems. I had to do it on my own. In the morning I made a smoothie while Luke cooked himself some eggs. We shuffled around the kitchen, neither of us talking much. Then we rode to the set listening to music, without much conversation. I thought about what I could do to prove I could be confident in my body, and my relationship with Luke. When we pulled up to the set, Luke patted my knee and smiled. "Go get him," he said encouragingly. I nodded, still feeling guarded. We walked our separate ways toward our respective tents to set up for the day. I noticed Rita, in another skimpy bikini, run up to Luke when she saw him, and I groaned. He looked back to see my disdain and then turned his head and walked with Rita. Jimmy came up behind me, tapping me on the shoulder. "Hey, the director needs some close-ups today. He wants to see some serious wave riding. You game?" "Definitely," I said, still staring at Rita through squinted eyes. "He said it's up to us to show him what we've got if we want to make it in the film." I nodded. I knew what I had to do. If the movie director wanted skin, I'd give him skin. Then I'd show Luke I didn't need to run and hide. I knew I had the skills to make the cut, now I had to prove I had the self-confidence too. Chapter 50, Fit and Fabulous. I hurried to the tent meant for the extras, Jimmy trailing a step behind me. My look of determination made the paddle-boarding twins step aside, and watch as I stepped up to the rack of bikinis. I picked out a bright neon green two-piece. Pretty skimpy, but not as skimpy as the butt floss I pulled off the rack the day before. Behind the dressing screens I pulled on the swimsuit. With no mirrors in the tent I couldn't really tell how it fit. The top with its thin elastic strap seemed to hold my chest up okay, and the bottom, while not entirely covering my butt, concealed it enough. I asked one of the twins to take a picture of me with her phone so I could see the result. When she turned her phone to face me, I could see I didn't look bad. The suit accentuated my bust enough that the trouble sections in my stomach and thighs didn't stick out so much. I certainly didn't look like Rita, but I'd gotten more fit since training with Luke and it showed. I looked strong and tight. Gathering my stuff before I came out from behind the curtains, however, I could hear the twin whispering to another girl. "That's Luke's girlfriend." "Her?" I heard the other girl ask. "She doesn't look his type." "How would you know?" the twin asked. "Well, he's always cast with some pretty, tall girl in the movies." I groaned. I'd show them. As the extras started to filter out to the beach, Jimmy lagged behind waiting for me. "Well, no one will miss you in that," he said, speaking about the bright nature of the suit. "That's the point," I said. "Tits and ass, right?" I slapped my rear. "Let's go." We grabbed our boards and headed out to the water. Like the day before, one crew was filming the stars in their beach scene, while another crew focused on capturing action shots in the water with extras and other secondary characters. I knew I'd have some competition on the boogie board. I couldn't stand on it like the paddle boarders and the surfers showing some skin. I just have to show them my skills and hope that was enough to be featured in the movie. The surf appeared fairly wild that day, the winds having picked up overnight. It was sunny, but the breeze wafted along the water, creating bigger and bigger swells as the day went on. Jimmy and I caught a few waves, getting our bearings in the rough surf. I could see the twins struggling to maintain their balance on the paddle boards with the wind swirling. Some of the other surfers, mostly men, crashed after trying to ride the big waves. The large swells caused some to exit the water, taking breaks to avoid the pounding surf. No one had given the cameras an exceptional ride. Jimmy crashed out of his second wave in a row when I saw a huge swell forming out deep. I paddled into position to drop in just at the right point. I could see Jimmy watching me from the shallower part, just after the break. I kicked as hard as I could, not wanting to miss this opportunity, determined to prove myself. As the wave lurched under me, I panicked for a split second. It brought me up high, and the distance between the height and low point of the wave looked like a mile. I sucked in my breath and held on to my board tighter, preparing for a wild ride. My board careened down the crest, and I turned into the barrel of the wave. As the wave's water cascaded over me, I continued to slope down the wave, turning into it to slow my speed and stay in the barrel. Then I turned toward the shore, and the wave pushed me into the beach, near where some waterlogged extras were standing. I stood up, holding my board at my side, and walked onto the beach. That was pretty awesome, one said. Thanks, I smiled at them. Jimmy came up behind me. You slayed that wave. He gave me a high five. The PA who proved unhelpful the day before regarding the skimpy bikini approached me and told me they caught my ride on camera and wanted to get some other shots of me walking along the beach, paddling out, etc. to include in the movie. Are you up for it? She asked. You'll have to show some skin, you know. Of course, I said. I'm fit and fabulous. I stood tall, my hip cocked, confident in my body. After all, that body had just delivered a monster performance. When we finished filming for the day, I couldn't wait to tell Luke. Since I had been hung up filming the extra scenes, I hadn't noticed that his side of the production left for the day. Another PA approached me with a note that read, Stella. Wrapped early. Hitched a ride home. Here are the keys. Luke. The keys to his new Range Rover sat folded between the piece of paper. Luke's note was pretty straightforward, but I was bummed he hadn't waited for me. I said goodbye to Jimmy, gathered my things and hopped in the car. By the time I pulled up to our place, the sun started to set. Pink and purple hues illuminated the sky behind the house. Looking at the sky, the natural beauty infused me with a peaceful feeling. I wanted more than ever to tell Luke about my day. When I walked through the door, I didn't hear anything. Luke, I called. There was no answer. Luke. I looked around. No lights were on. I ran upstairs. After I checked every room, I figured he must have gone out for drinks or something with some people. Unlike the tranquil sky, the empty, darkening house made me feel worried. What if he was with Rita? Then I saw it. A trail of rose petals leading out the back door and onto the deck. I followed the petals, leading me onto the yard and then down the steps to the sand. Excitement started welling inside me. I reached the beach and saw Luke standing close to the water, his back toward me at first, his body silhouetted by the dim light of the sunset. He looked so sexy against the backdrop of the beach in the setting sun, so powerful yet gentle. After a few seconds he turned, seeing me jogging to him on the beach. I ran into his arms, happy and impressed with his surprise. Oh Luke, when I didn't see you at home I was worried, I said, still wrapped in his arms. He didn't say anything. I could sense a bit of tension in his face and his arms, so I continued babbling. I'm sorry about last night. I shouldn't doubt myself. You should have seen me today. He stopped me by placing his forefinger delicately on my lips. I saw, he said. You did. I didn't quite believe him. Why hadn't he come over to encourage me? You were striking and graceful the way you handled that wave. And then afterward I thought for sure you'd balk at them filming extra scenes, but you were brave. You didn't need any coaxing from me. I beamed at him. He kissed me long and hard, several waves lapping at our feet by the time our lips separated. And you looked stunning in that bikini. I laughed. I knew then, he said, suddenly afraid to meet my eyes. I held my breath, not sure what Luke meant. Knew what? I asked. He pointed to an area of sand with a bunch of seashells. I looked over, but still didn't comprehend what Luke was trying to tell me. Go look, he said. I walked over, and as I stood closer, I could see they were arranged to form letters. The shells spelled out, I love you. I ran back to Luke, wrapped my arms around his neck and circled his waist with my legs as he held me up, kissing me fervently on the lips. I love you too, I said. Luke spread out a beach blanket to sit on, and we continued to kiss. We each ripped off our own clothes and intertwined ourselves with each other. Luke pressed his body on top of mine, and we made love on beach. My heart burst with passionate and warm feelings for Luke as he pressed inside me, both of us eager to express our love. Our lovemaking was both tender and lively, ending with a combined moment of ecstasy. When we were through, we looked out at the water, holding hands, as the moon highlighted the crests of the ocean's waves. What's next, boss? He asked. I'm not sure. Let's just enjoy each other in Hawaii. I squeezed his hand. Now that you're fit and fabulous, what does that make me? He asked. A hopeless romantic? Something like that, he said. I love you, Stella. And like the first time I heard Luke say my name, those words made my heart flutter.